Hello, my name is Jamin Horton, and I'm a voice engineer here at Intuit. I want to apologize. As you can probably tell, I'm in my home office, so please forgive the production quality. I hope, however, you find the presentation useful, especially if you're experiencing the issue discussed here today. The purpose of this recording is to address an ongoing issue that some of our work-from-home agents have been experiencing. The error is known as 2011 no signaling. Long story short, this is a result of a signal from the phone not making it to our telecom switch in Plano, Texas. While we continue to investigate, all indicators point to an issue with the end user's home router. Our current recommendation is to add a new router to the existing setup. Today I'm going to show you how to add this new router and ultimately get your VPN phone up and working. The router we currently recommend is the Linksys E1200 wireless N300 router pictured here. Let's take a closer look at the contents, shall we? You should receive a startup CD, a USB cable, the router itself, a blue network cable pictured here, as well as a power adapter that I've currently connected to the receptacle. For now, you can set the CD and the USB cable off to the side. Let's take a closer look at the router, shall we, as it should mimic your existing home router. As you can see, color-coded, we have 4 LAN ports, or local area network ports. These are the ports that connect to your phone, your computer, any of your devices that require an internet connection. Off to the right, labeled yellow, we have an internet port, sometimes known as the WAN port. And this is what will ultimately connect to your internet service provider. And then we have the power port for the power adapter. I want to talk more about the local area network ports, as that's ultimately what we need to locate on your existing home router. Mine is in the foreground off to the right. So on the back of your existing home router, try to find a spare LAN port. If you can't find a spare LAN port, please use your existing company computer and trace its network cable back to your existing home internet router, and then disconnect it. In turn, take the blue cable that came with the Linksys home router and connect it to that now free spare LAN port. Now take the other end that I have pictured here and connect it to the internet port of the Cisco router. It should be firm. You'll hear a clicking sound. And now what we want to do is we want to take either a spare network cable or the existing network cable that you just disconnected from your computer and take that other end, pictured here, and you want to connect it to any one of the spare LAN ports on the back of the router. Now you want to make sure the other end of that cable, pictured here, is connected to your Intuit computer. Lastly, once you have verified that all the cables are connected firmly, you want to connect the power. You'll see it proceed to boot up. And while it boots up, next I'm going to show you how to check the router itself and make sure it's configured properly and that we can surf the internet before connecting your VPN phone. Okay, now that we have our computer connected to the new router, we need to verify and possibly make some changes before attempting to connect the VPN phone. One of the first things we need to look at are our network adapters, and we can do that at Start, Control Panel, Network and Internet, Network Connections, and Change Adapter Settings. You should land on this particular page, and here we can see all of the network adapters that are associated with our computer. The main one of relevance for us is our local area connection. And as we can see, once we've connected the new network cable from the Linksys router to our local area connection or our network adapter, we can see that the local area connection cannot successfully identify the network. The reason is because it still thinks it's connected to your existing home internet connection or your existing home router. The quickest way to fix this is to simply right-click to disable the local area connection or the network adapter and re-enable it. This will start a fresh dialogue between the computer and the router. Now, it can take up to 30 to 45 seconds depending on your network adapter or just the router itself. You just never know. But if after that allotted amount of time, if it doesn't successfully display some type of connection here other than identifying or unknown or unidentified network, simply right-click and disable again, enable it. It will eventually successfully identify the network. So as we can see, it successfully identified the network. Keep in mind yours may be different. It may say something entirely different here. But now that we know that the local area connection can successfully recognize the connection the Cisco router is broadcasting, we need to see what network information it's broadcasting and how we'll ultimately connect to this Cisco router. So the simplest way is to right-click and go to Status. We want to click on the Details page. And as we can see, it's been given an IP address on the 192.168 subnet. And the main thing we're looking for is right here, IP version 4 default gateway. And we can see it's a 192.168.1.1. This is the IP address we're going to use to connect to the web GUI interface for this particular Linksys router. So let's go ahead and close out those tabs. We'll bring up a web browser. We'll type in 192.168.1.1, hit enter. This is going to be the main interface page for this router. Now, there are two separate ways to set up this particular router. One is with the automatic or automated CD that it came with, and the other way, which I'm going to show you now, is the manual way. And the reason I'm showing you the manual way is because my experience with the CD it didn't work so well. So this is the only way I can guarantee that your experience will be the same. So what we're going to do, if you want to use the CD, feel free to do so. But if you want to continue with the manual way, it's not a whole lot of steps, not a whole lot of work. Hit continue with open and unsecured network. Click the checkbox, hit continue. Now sometimes it doesn't display, the page completely. Just hit refresh and it should bring it up. Click the checkbox, do not show me this again, if you don't want to see that every time you get into the router, and click OK. Now this is the main setup page for the router. But one of the first things we want to look at is the status. If we click on the status tab, and we want to look at the internet connection. How does this router know how to get out to the internet? And if we can see here, it learned it via DHCP, and the internet IP address it was given was a 172.16 address in this particular subnet, the 172.16 subnet. Now, there are 3 private ranges of IP addresses. And to kind of make a long story short, there are a limited number of public IP addresses that are available to communicate or that are routable across the public internet. To kind of address this, because there wasn't enough for every computer out there, to address this, they created 3 separate private IP ranges. Now, the router keeps track of all these internal private IP addresses and combines all the traffic onto one public IP that it in turn uses to communicate with the rest of the world via the internet. Now, most routers use the 192.168 subnet. As we can see here, though, on my particular router, I'm using the 172.16 subnet upstream. Now, if your router, and when you connect, and if your internet connection says 192.168, you're going to have to change some settings on the setup page. So if it is a 10 address or a 172 address, then you're okay to proceed. You can probably open up another separate tab, see if you can go to Google, see if you can pull some pages. If you can, you're good to proceed. Simply disconnect the cable and connect it into your VPN phone, and I'll show you later the steps to setting up your VPN phone. Now, if you have a 192.168 address, we're going to want to go to the setup page, and we're going to want to change the router address. We're going to want to change the DHCP server scope that the router uses to hand out IP addresses. Now, I'm going to show you two that you can put in here. If you want more information about private IP addresses and NAT, simply go to Wiki and look at for private network, and you can see the private IP version 4 address spaces, and they are listed here. But for this one, I'm going to use the 10 subnet, so 10.0.0.1. This will become the new management IP address of this particular router, and that's how we'll access this router once we save the changes, because we're changing the management IP for this particular router. We're going to leave the subnet mask the same, and once we click Save Settings, it will change this to 10.0.0, and if you want to change it to just say 2, you can, so it'll start handing out IP addresses from 2, but let's leave it at the standard at 100. It's going to hand out a maximum of 50 IP addresses. We'll leave that the same. If you want to change the time zone, you're free to do so. We click Save Settings, Continue. The router is going to reboot. While it's rebooting, we want to look at our network adapters again. We can see it's rebooting because it's losing connection. And ultimately, we want this to come back up again and become a identified network. If it shows unidentified, simply right-click, disable, enable. It's going to go through the process of trying to identify this network again. Much like before, if it comes back and says unidentified, simply disable and re-enable again, and you eventually will get the correct setting. Okay, it has now successfully identified it. Now we're going to want to check the IP configuration for this. We go to Status, like we did before, Details. We can see now that the IP version default gateway is 10.0.0.1, and we've got an IP address .130. So we're going to close it out, close it. Like before, if it doesn't display all the way, just click refresh and it will show it. We're just going to want to check status one more time. Make sure everything stays the same. We're still good to go. From here, we should be able to open up a separate browser window. Let's go to Google. Well, looks like we're good to go. Okay. So as you can see, we successfully connected to the internet. We're good to go. We can now disconnect the cable from the computer, and we're going to want to connect it to the top port in the back of the phone, and we would do that right here. Now keep in mind, when you reconnect your existing network cable from your existing home router, you may have to follow the same procedure with enabling and disabling the network adapter so that you can once again successfully connect to the internet. So let's take a look at now connecting your VPN phone. Now that we have successfully verified that the new router can successfully communicate to the internet, we should now be able to hook up our VPN phone without incident. It's important that we take the cable connected to the back of the computer into the local area connection and remove that. And what we need to do now is we need to connect it to the power brick that connects to the VPN phone. Let's take a closer look at that power brick. As you can see, the power brick has two ports. One of them is labeled data in, the other one is data power out. The cable here, yellow, is the cable that was connected to our computer. The other end of this cable connects to a LAN port on the new Cisco router. The cable here, the gray cable on data power out, goes directly to the uppermost top port on the back of the VPN phone. What happens is the signal comes in, the internet signal comes in, it picks up power, and on the way out it pushes power and internet connectivity to the VPN phone. So once this is connected, let's take a closer look at the VPN phone and the login process involved. As we can see here, the phone booted up. It does have internet connectivity, or at least it has an IP address. If it did not, it would not display the VPN username. It would be stuck in a DHCP prompt, and a counter can be continually climbing. If you have the VPN username, you simply hit enter. It's going to ask you for a password. This is where your RSA token comes into play. Now there are two types of tokens. There's a soft token and a hard token. A soft token is an application that runs on your computer. A hard token is an actual token you have in your hand. If you have a hard token, you're going to enter the PIN and the numeric token that the PIN generates into the phone itself. For a soft token, you're going to enter in your numeric PIN, and it has to be all numeric, both for hard and for soft tokens. It has to be all numeric. You're going to enter that into your application. It will generate an 8-digit token. You will in turn enter that 8-digit token. And hit enter. The phone will reach out to the VPN gateway. It will exchange keys. It will attempt to build a VPN tunnel. Once it successfully builds a VPN tunnel, it will initiate a conversation with our HTTP server. This is where it looks for its firmware, its settings files, all that stuff. Once it has successfully contacted the HTTP server, it will reach out to our call server in Plano, Texas, and attempt to register. If registration was successful, you will see your extension displayed. If your extension is not pre-populated in the phone, it will ask you for your extension and your password. Once you enter that in, you should see the screen below. Now we're going to check to make sure we have dial tone. We do have dial tone, so 2011 is not affecting us. Now that we have the phone connected, now we need to, if you were one of those who did not have a spare LAN port on the back of your existing home router, we have two options available. One is to take a network cable and run it directly from your computer to the back side of the phone. Directly below the uppermost top port, it's going to be the second port down. You can connect that cable, and now you will have network connectivity to your laptop. However, one thing to keep in mind is if the phone ever reboots, you're going to lose network connectivity on your laptop while the phone is rebooting. Another option is, now that you have a new router added to your network, you have 3 additional spare LAN ports. You can run a cable directly from one of the other spare LAN ports, and you can run that directly to your Intuit PC, and you should have network connectivity all the time, regardless of whether your phone reboots or not. So I hope that at the end of this video you ultimately have your phone working and you're no longer experiencing the 2011 issue. I know it's been frustrating for a lot of our end users. It's been frustrating for us as well. We appreciate your patience. Should you have additional problems or questions, please please feel free to open up a help desk ticket with our voice operations group, and one of them will be glad to assist. Once again, thank you for your patience, and good luck.